For today's podcast, we have no sunspots and a possible shower of snakes in the third segment.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. So I have a bunch of weird stuff to talk about this podcast. We have no guest. It's just going to be us, old school style, hanging out, talking about pyramids.
We don't have time for your thoughts.
Snake.
I got too many thoughts I need to get out.
Yeah, we're having an argument here pre-show about whose thoughts are going to be talked about during this show. So we may come to a head in mid-show, have a giant fight. But first, let's introduce our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. What's up, buddy? Glad to have you back on the intro part of the show.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah.
Definitely good to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while since we were able to actually get you. You've been on the shows, but for whatever reason, you weren't here for the intro recordings, like if we were doing a guest or something.
Yeah, usually because that portion comes at like 11 p.m.
Yeah. You need to get your priorities straight.
Yeah. Buddy?
Yeah, I definitely do, actually. Forget this ambulance garbage.
Right. Stop saving lives and let's figure out what's going on.
Save the human race and help us figure out how to get off the planet.
All right. What else we got before that? I think that's it. We introduced the watcher. So,
Yeah.
are you ready for space weather news from spaceweather.com? A summer without sunspots. Since northern summer began on June 21st, the sun has been blank, that is, without sunspots, 88% of the time. The only interruptions have been a handful of tiny, quiet sunspots that sometimes disintegrated within hours of forming. The remainder of the summer appears to continue in the same way. Welcome to Solar Minimum, which is a link. Wonder where that goes. Geomagnetic storm forecast. Earth is about to be hit by a double stream of solar wind. The two streams are flowing from holes in the sun's atmosphere, shown here in an extreme ultraviolet image from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. So these holes are enormous. There's one over on the west side, and then there's one like south central east. South central east. You guys got that right? These are coronal holes, places where the sun's magnetic field opens up and allows solar wind to escape. Solar wind flowing from the right coronal hole is expected to arrive on August 28th. A more potent stream of solar wind flowing from the left coronal hole should reach us on September 1st or 2nd. G1 class geomagnetic storms are possible on both dates, although September 1st and 2nd is more likely to experience storm conditions. Why? Because the coronal hole on the left is spewing a faster stream of gas than the one on the right. Approximately 650 kilometers a second versus approximately 500 kilometers per second, respectively. So, current conditions. Solar wind. Speed is 348.8 kilometers per second, and the density is 11.3 protons per cubic centimeter.
It was so freaking hot today. I was in a bee suit.
Oh, yeah, you were working on the bees.
Yeah. Inspected 3 hives and then almost passed out.
Oh, wow.
Not really. I mean, I got a little lightheaded.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to wash the bee suit because so much sweat. Not fun.
Yeah.
The bees were also mad.
I bet. It's too hot. They're mad from the heat.
But they should be much happier now. So
yeah, you gave them food and changed some stuff. Gave them
some protective stuff.
Yeah.
Got rid of some moths. I also captured a swarm today.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, there
Where
was
that?
one of them. There was just a swarm near the other bees in a tree, and I made up some food. Gave them a little.
Is it one of ours that absconded?
I think it may have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because we had 2 that left.
Yeah.
But that was a month ago or more.
Oh, well, yeah,
left.
you're probably right.
So this group was hanging out on a branch, a big old ball of bees, and I got one of the nuke boxes
which means nuclear, like, right?
Yeah, it's a small box that the frames that they make the honeycomb on, you can fit like 4 of them in there in a feeder. So I put a feeder in there, gave them some of the special juice in the feeder.
Yeah.
And then put one of those carbohydrate patties in the bottom of it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I shook them off the branch and they fell in there. And then I sat down and just watched them. And
See what they
it's
do.
completely sealed, right? They can't get out. There's these whole round circles on the sides that have screen door screen taped
Yeah.
to them. So I cut a tiny little slit in one of the screens. It's about the size of the holes in a queen excluder,
Oh, okay, yeah.
which is a screen that keeps the queen from being able to go through.
right. So that she doesn't lay eggs in the area where you're going to harvest honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was a hole to allow the little bees to go in and out, but not the queen, because I was hoping that I had captured the queen inside.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they're all freaking out. And so I sit down and watch. And after a while, more bees start collecting on the branch where they were.
Oh, right.
So I'm like, okay. Yeah, Brett's watcher's
Yeah, he's
putting
got a ball of bees
yes,
up here.
like
yeah.
that. So after a little while, when a bunch of them collected on the branch, I was really inspecting the branch. Like, did I miss the queen? Because I couldn't see her when I dropped them into the box.
Of course, yeah.
So I opened the box real quick and dropped all the ones that had collected back on the branch in the box, closed it again.
Yeah.
And then waited, and they were kind of going crazy. And then something changed, and they chilled out, and then bees started going. I was counting 1 out,
Oh,
2
yeah.
out, 1 in,
Yeah.
2 in, and then eventually it was like in. They all started just going in the hole.
The queen was like, new home.
Yeah, the queen
She
was
started putting
obviously
out the
in there,
new-
and she was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is a good spot."
She started putting out the new home pheromone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I left them, and they were in the shade of the tree. And I came back about an hour later, and they were all calm and just acting like totally just like, we're
Yeah.
home.
Nice.
So I left them there, and we'll check them again tomorrow and see.
Awesome.
And since it's a nuke box, we can now move them,
Yeah.
But I didn't want to tape them up because they don't have water. I only put the feed in there.
Yeah.
So they need to be able to get out and get water.
Yeah.
But we get a little water feeder for them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've tried this multiple times, and we've never been able to keep them.
Yeah.
So hopefully this time it'll work.
But I'm thinking it'll work because if the queen, and maybe she can get out of the hole. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I try to make it real small. And the bees like squeeze themselves in there, like, "Rah!" Should we get through the hole.
All right.
But yeah, the proton density was obviously high.
Right.
Yeah.
The bees wanted to get away from the protons.
Sorry.
If you're getting 11.3 protons per cubic centimeter, need a box to hide it.
That's serious.
Yeah.
I knew there was something going on.
That's the highest reading we've ever
Yeah.
had on the show. So I don't know what I haven't looked at they have a histogram that shows the history of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm
pretty serious.
assuming it's high because we got these 2 holes in the corona with all that wind coming out. So
Yeah. See, I think the electric universe people are onto something. They think they talk about how the sun is really, it's this,
yeah, plasma ball.
like the plasma is like creating this,
yeah.
it's not totally full
Right.
of stuff. It's actually a sort of a shell.
Yeah.
And like when a whole, it's
So
weird.
you think it's a giant lightning bolt coming from the center of the galaxy? It's
Yeah.
powering the sun?
Yeah, a hole in the atmosphere opens up and like gas and wind pours out.
Yeah.
And then when there's a sunspot, it's black.
Right.
Like it's
cool.
dark.
It's cooler
It's
in
cold.
there. Yeah.
So come on.
Yeah.
It can't be. I mean, that's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it can be, but it can be full of stuff. But it seems like if it was really full of things and fusion, when a sunspot formed, it would be hotter,
It seems like it. Yeah.
brighter.
Yeah. Yeah. A sunspot is some kind of weird problem with the magnetic fields with all the, according to the standard model.
Yeah.
And so like the fusion is dampened there because of the magnetic field issues. That's what their idea is.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Still electric.
Yeah, it is. All right, so communications from you guys, the listeners. I have one.
What's up?
Yeah, I have one here from Apple Podcasts. This is from Australia. County Court Judge via Apple Podcasts from Australia. We have judges listening to us now. Don't judge, bro. Says, get them to the pyramid. These Snake brothers are so talented at the art of podcasts. They bring you along on their journey into ancient history and new discovery. Their laugh is infectious. They actually write their own music and jokes. Double threat. Wow, this is not the whole thing. Sorry. Hold on, let me pull up the entire... I just realized that this is not the entire comment here. Okay, here it is. They're double threat. Their intelligence is profound, and by association, you become intelligent just by listening. Definitely recommend you listen. Snakes!
Thanks, Judge. That's really nice.
Yeah.
They write their own music and jokes.
Double threat!
I have never written a joke. I need to start doing that.
Yeah, not much writing going on. Well, the music is written, kind of.
Yeah, recorded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not trying to split hairs here, Judge.
Objection, Your Honor. We do not write these jokes.
We record everything.
Oh, God. Yeah, see, here we go. Writing jokes. Okay. A couple of emails here. Oh, man, we didn't get this soundbite. So we'll load this up at some point. This is from David. What's that? Yeah, we'll get it off after the break. Hello. I love your podcast. My main job is architecture and architectural history. But I do many audio and video things with my old podcast and my new YouTube. I came across this old audio on my computer I recorded off the TV years ago. It will probably come in handy for some incidental linking element audio on your show if you'd like to use it. This is Homer having a nightmare about snakes and screaming, "Ah, cobras!"
Yes.
I have the context around it if you want to use Bart talking to who's that? Crabapple? Is that right?
I don't know.
You know a character named Crabapple?
Can't remember. It's been a long time.
But just the clip out of context is perfect. And I'll probably email you about a Zep Tepi and Egyptian pre-dynastic galactic center proper motion hypothesis soon. And I'd love to get your reaction on that. Enjoy, David.
Heck yeah. Crabapple.
Crabapple. Okay. I don't watch The Simpsons.
Man, I watched every one that I could. I recorded them on VHS.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I had multiple VHS tapes completely full of Simpsons episodes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And The Critic. That was a funny one, too. I don't know what happened to that one.
I liked The Tick.
The kid from Easter Island had the big stone head.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
trying to do sit-ups.
Yeah. Even the kid from Easter Island can do one.
All right. This is from Maverick. This is Maverick the Maggot. That guy, I read his comment on Apple Podcasts earlier, and now he sent us an email. So, converting the non-slithery. Advice needed. Hey, guys. So, I am emailing because I'm looking for some advice. I've been listening to the show for a couple of months. I'm on episode 41, but I've listened to a few other stragglers like The Sign and the Seal, The Coral Castle, Randall Carlson, etc. And I'm trying to make snakes of my closest friends because I believe in the things y'all are trying to accomplish and hope to spread as much snaky cheer and knowledge as possible. I've convinced one of them to start, and he liked episode 3 about the carbon dating and the devil's footprints, and it definitely tripped him out a bit of what I was hoping for. So then I moved him on to episode 61, Coral Castle and the Voynich manuscript, and he enjoyed some of the content but wasn't as engaged as with episode 3. But I can tell his route is serpentine and he will get there, and that most of my other friends will too if I lead them into your podcast in the correct way. I don't want to throw them in the fire pit and overwhelm them with all the things I've learned through the episodes. I imagine trying to tell them things like, quote, giants are real, academia covers everything up, ancient texts and myths have actual history in them, all you know about Egypt and the pyramids and everything is distorted, sacred numbers percolate through the universe through geometry, and long heads will destroy us all, we all live a lie as subservient Adamu, unquote. And them thinking, where did he get the acid he's tripping on? The main point I am trying to make is, what suggestions would you have for where to start to get them interested in eventually Snake Brethren? Obviously, I want them to start at episode 1, but they're all pretty busy with new jobs, girlfriends/wives. We all just graduated college within the last year, and I don't imagine them fully committing the way I have without setting a good few hooks and reeling them in to the point where there is no going back. So, this becomes a time thing. Any suggestions? I know they'll make the time to listen to the episodes once they understand how enjoyable and fulfilling it is. it becomes to learn about all the subject matters you guys discuss. Keep up the good content. I am eager to spread my belly skin and continue to crawl along on this journey with you. I eventually plan on attending a conference at the cabin, but money and vacation are hard to dispense at the moment due to the treachery that is student debt. Still doing my best to help the pyramid scheme by repping the Snake Bros apparel when I work out. Good design on that, by the way. A lot of people think that they say it looks like a Game of Thrones kind of symbol, which means a lot of them are reading the shirt. Sincerely, Maverick the Maggot.
That's awesome.
So we did so for your main question, we did an episode. What was it? The rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole.
Let's see if I can find it here.
Episode 65.
Is it 65?
Nope. Hold on.
No. It's in here somewhere. Okay, the rabbit hole is episode 82.
82.
So 82 is a great one if you want to try. But I don't know, man. Like,
I also think, like, you know, for me, I would always, you know, feel them out. Like, obviously, they're your friends, so you kind of know where their interests are. So, for me, if some of my friends were interested in the pyramids, or others were interested in religion, so I would like go down those roads of their own interests, you know, and talk to them about those things. And I don't know. That's kind of sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it takes a long time.
yeah,
Some people.
it took me years to get Kyle interested in this. Not really. But yeah, like what he's saying is right. Find out what their area of interest is and then take them down that road. Because in this stuff, all roads lead to all other roads, just about. So
Yeah, but episode 82 is a good sort of. I mean, we tried anyway to do sort of a
beginner's outline or overview, but you know that doesn't always grab people either.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's kind of like what you basically said, you know, like all that your whole thing, like imagine telling them that the long heads are real and all that stuff. That's basically what we did in the rabbit hole episode.
Yeah, right. But the other thing is that if they're real scientifically minded, then like Ganton Brick's Door, there's a 2-episode deal.
Yeah.
And it's this German engineer who's doing all this work, and Russ goes through his whole website and his journal on all of this stuff that he did.
Yeah.
It's freaking awesome. And so people that are interested in the pyramid at all, you don't have to tell them anything about it. You just say like, dude, you should check this out because it's actually recounting like all the work that this engineer did on the quote unquote air shafts. It's fascinating.
Yeah, so that's episodes 85 and 86, the Oop Project and Ganton Brick's Door. Also, in that vein, I would recommend episode number 80, Impossiblocks with GMA.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's all engineering and numbers, and he's just bam, 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 just showing you how this precision and these weights and all this stuff is just like unexplainable in terms of butt flap technology.
You're going to have to email him back because he probably won't listen to this episode for a while.
Because he's still listening to the beginning ones. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, the interview with the Snake Stash, which is called Pyramids Are Hard, and that's episode 84. Because we have the Stash on here, and he's built a lot of stuff. So we talked to him about building and moving enormous loads and the machinery required to do that, and what the weights are and what all the logistics are, and then we get into like the pyramid and the Baalbek blocks, and so that's a great episode too. But yeah, what Kyle said, basically, it's every person has their own, there's a rabbit hole for everyone, basically. You just have to find out which one it is and then direct them to that particular hole. And of course, we may not have covered it, or we've covered it in just like one segment. Like, you know, there's just no way. I can't remember all the stuff we covered in the first couple of years. Like, I look at those podcasts and I'm like, wow, I don't know what material is in these anymore because it's been years since we did it. So, great question, though. It's a question we've gotten often from people. How do I get my friends interested in this so I have someone to talk to about this stuff? Can't help you, buddy.
Just keep talking about it, and you'll find new friends.
Yeah, get new friends. That's my first piece of advice.
All the people that are annoyed by it will stop being your friend, and you might attract some new ones that
That's right.
are interested in what.
Good point. Let's see. What else do we have here? Well, I better not spend time looking through that.
Jess, you got any other?
Yeah, I have other emails. Sorry, I was just looking through the other recent shows. Okay, this one's called Snake Tube. From Tommy. Listening from the shores of a lake in a gorge incised into an ancient desiccated seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he must be close. I'm trying to guess which lake he's on. Oh, is that your friend? Is that the guy you know?
No,
I'm asking this to Kyle.
I don't recognize the name.
Okay. That's not propane guy? Okay.
No.
All right. Greetings, Snake Tube. I have been waiting to share this with someone/s, who may actually get excited about the effort shared in the link below. Behold the glowing Snake Tube. And then he's got a link here to thunderbolts.info forum. 6 pages of posts over 3 or 4 years. And then he says, will donate this weekend and just got paid for a finished job with a bonus.
And he did.
Yeah, that's right. He did.
So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. So I went to that link, Tommy, and checked it out. I've read that entire thread. It is fascinating. That basically is detailing. It's someone detailing their experiments of trying to replicate the Dendera tube. The
thing that's drawn in the
the Dendera light, the big tube with the snake in it.
Yeah.
It's a detailed recounting with pictures of them trying to replicate that using a what's it called? It's a particular kind of electrical device. Shit. I knew the name of it too when I came down here. Let me see it.
like a transformer. I mean,
No, it's a
you gotta have high power.
it's a plasma. Let's see. Low density plasma focus device. There's one of the pictures they took with it running.
That's cool.
Yeah. And they start with
A Baghdad
battery technology, and
Yes.
they work it up from that. And then they have this, the Hathor Croatium or Sistrum, and they think that this is probably a depiction of a battery type thing.
That's
so they
awesome.
build one that looks like it, a simple electromagnetic buzzer circuit. They show you how, okay, so here's this with the scepter, the Minat necklace. They're assuming they're just taking the assumption that all these depictions are actually depicting devices, and they've just been misunderstood.
That's awesome.
So they build all these things that look like that. They're showing a picture. Here's an alchemical laboratory with a snake in a bottle. So let's see. Solar disk headdresses. Yeah, so the Egyptians having technology for making glass bottles and filling them with various gases under low pressure. But I found it hard to imagine them having the technology to required to pull a high vacuum needed for a standard incandescent lamp or cathode ray tube, a Crookes tube.
But if you had like argon or some inert gas,
Right.
there might be
That's what they're talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of, maybe they couldn't pull a hard vacuum on it, but if they were able to fill it with some gas and then use it, and that's what they assumed. That's why it's a plasma bulb. And they actually build it, and they build this battery type device that looks like one of the depictions of it's real small,
yeah.
but it's like stacked discs inside of this thing. And it looks just like the picture of one of the things that the woman's holding in the depictions on the walls. They call it the Egyptologists call it a rattle.
Oh yeah.
Because it's actually this thing with a handle on the bottom of it, right? It's like, no, it's not a rattle.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he goes through his whole thing where he's using all this stuff and he's trying to figure out how can I do it and make it and do it based on things that look like the ancient depictions. Anyway, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I did read that. It's great stuff. And I think we've talked about that the Dendera lights have been considered to be a variant of the Crookes tube plasma light generator. And they're going off. They're sort of doing this thing that I find interesting, where they're like, let's say that they could do this, but it was still a secret of the priests, and they just used it to make people believe in their religion. That's basically what the idea is, right? The priests could magically turn on this glowing bulb light,
Yeah.
and then everyone would be like, but
But they must have needed it. They must have needed it to carve that stuff into the walls because there's no light in there.
Right, yeah, and there's no smoke on the walls and stuff. Yeah, that's right.
Let's take these light bulbs into this cave and carve ourselves holding these light bulbs in this cave.
Yeah. Yeah, this is cool stuff. So
That's cool. Tommy.
Yeah, appreciate the email and the donations, buddy.
You are on the Edwards Plateau. That's interesting.
Yeah, is that really true? Who are you? Okay. I have some stories. Do you have some stories?
I have one.
All right, let's hear it.
Let me pull it up here.
Yeah.
This is from fakesnews.com. Foxnews.com by James Rogers. Mysterious pointy and lengthened skulls discovery sheds a new light on strange ancient rituals. All right. They found long heads and it's skull binding.
Right.
Right off the headline, you can tell.
Yeah. Oh, the headline. I got what you did there. The headline makes the point.
Yeah, it's a long headline. But the discovery of pointy and lengthened skulls in Croatia is shedding new light on the region's strange ancient rituals. Experts studied 3 skulls excavated from a pit in Osijek in eastern Croatia in 2013. The skeletons, which were dated to the 5th and 6th centuries BC, were found to be the remains of 3 adolescent males. Experts, however, were intrigued by the unusual shape of 2 of the skulls. Their paper on the skulls was published in the journal PLOS One. Quote, "We were inspired to study these individuals based on their unusual burial context, as well as the identification of 2 different types of artificial cranial deformation in 2 of the individuals," said Daniel Fernandez, a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Evolutionary Anthropology, University of Vienna, and one of the 2 lead authors of the study in a statement. And here's some pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Experts explained that one skull had been lengthened obliquely and another had been compressed and heightened. The research also revealed that the skeletons came from very different regions. Results of ancient DNA analyses indicate that the individual without artificial cranial deformation shows broadly West Eurasian associated ancestry. The individual with the elongated skull has East Asian ancestry, and the third individual has Near Eastern associated ancestry, said Ron Pinhasi, head of the Ancient DNA Laboratory at the University of Vienna, who co-directed the study. The 3 individuals bore evidence of severe malnutrition. Experts say that the deliberate deformation of their skulls may have been a way to distinguish their cultural identities. Quote, "Artificial cranial deformation is a deliberate act performed on infants with the aim to achieve a desired skull shape using boards, pads, or specially made headdresses," end quote, explained Kendra Sirac, a postdoctoral fellow, Harvard Medical School, and the lead author of the study. Researchers note that the practice was typically used to denote status, nobility, or affiliation to a specific class or group. How do they know this?
Burial context?
Yeah, I guess maybe. They say that it's notable because of the unusual burial
Right.
style, but I don't think they say anything about the burial in the story. The skulls, which date from 415 to 560 BC, are from an era known as the Great Migration Period, when there was great movement and contact across a number of European cultures. We propose, "We propose that the type of artificial cranial deformation may have been a visual indicator of membership in a specific cultural group," said Mario Novak, a bioarchaeologist at the Institute for Anthropological Research in Zagreb, and a senior author of the study in the statement.
So by cultural group, do you think he means a culture of people or like a group inside a culture?
Yeah, I was
Like, in
thinking-
other words, like, I mean, because you don't find that many of them. It doesn't imply that there's a whole bunch of people that were deforming their skulls. So does he mean like a group of elites inside of a culture?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's weird that there's 3, the 3 skeletons were like they're from.
Yeah,
we were
all the
looking
way
it up
across
before.
Eurasia, which is like all of Europe and China, and basically,
and Japan.
yeah, it's that entire mega continent.
So one's from sort of the middle, one's from way to the west, and the other one's from way to the east, or at least their ancestry is.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, how you know that they're one culture group, and then you say that they're from all over Eurasia.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Let's see. Anyway, that's basically the end. They talk about some other stuff.
Any comments?
There's this great comment. The Russian skull influenced the shape of the other two skulls. CNN.
Whoa. Whoa.
That's great.
Oh, God.
And like a bunch of people in here are like, come on. You know, these are a different type of humanoid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But they do. I mean, like, look at this picture of this skull. That doesn't look like.
That doesn't look deformed at all.
Yeah. They're long heads.
Yeah. Cranial deformation, they have pointed, you know, it noticeably gets smaller and it's pointed and stuff. I don't know. I don't know.
Check it out on fakesnews.com.
All right, I've got one here. Oh. Did you unplug something?
That was the last of my stories.
Oh.
Drop the phone.
All right, I've got one here from the Epoch Times. TheEpochTimes.com. Under archaeology. This is, I don't know how to say this Chinese word, but it's a name, a proper name. I'm just gonna guess. Gojian. That's what it looks like to me, phonetically. The ancient Chinese sword that defied time. 50 years ago, a rare and unusual sword was found in a tomb in China. Despite being well over 2,000 years old, this sword, known as, how did I say it? Gojian, did not have a single trace of rust. The blade drew blood when an archaeologist tested its edge with his finger. It was seemingly unaffected by the passage of time. Besides this strange quality, the craftsmanship was highly detailed for a sword made such a long time ago. See, there's the assumption of like butt flappers, right?
Yeah.
God, that just is so annoying.
He cut himself when he was testing the edge.
Yeah, it's classic Indiana Jones. Ow, it's still sharp. All right. All right, well, that was from Lord of the Rings, right?
Don't remember.
He picks up the broken blade and he puts his finger on it. It's like, ow, it's still sharp. Like the little tiny broken piece, it cuts him. Okay. Regarded as a state treasure in China today, the sword is as legendary to the Chinese people as King Arthur's Excalibur is in the West. In 1965, archaeologists discovered 50 ancient tombs while carrying out a survey in Hubei province, just 4 miles or 7 kilometers from the ruins of Jinan, the capital of the ancient Chu state. During the excavations of the tombs, the researchers unearthed the sword of Gojian, alongside approximately 2,000 other artifacts. According to the leader of the archaeological team responsible for the excavation, the sword was discovered in a nearly airtight wooden box next to a skeleton.
An airtight wooden box.
Yeah, that's what he says. Nearly airtight. Wow. The team was stunned when the perfectly preserved bronze sword with scabbard was removed from the box. So there's your reason why it wasn't rusted. It's bronze. Mm-hmm. When it was unsheathed, the blade was revealed to be untarnished despite being buried in damp conditions for 2 millennia. A test conducted by the archaeologists showed that the blade could easily cut a stack of 20 pieces of paper. That's pretty sharp. Wow. The sword of Gojian is one of the earliest known Jian swords, a double-edged straight sword. Jian swords are among the earliest sword types in China and are closely associated with Chinese mythology. In Chinese folklore, it is known as the gentleman of weapons, and is considered one of the 4 major weapons along with the staff, spear, and saber. Relatively short compared to similar historical pieces, the Gojian sword is a bronze sword with a high concentration of copper, making it more pliant and less likely to shatter. The edges are made of tin, making them harder and capable of retaining a sharp edge.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It also contains small amounts of iron, lead, and sulfur, and research has revealed a high proportion of sulfur and sulfide cuprum, which gives the sword its rust-proof quality. Black rhombic etchings cover both sides of the blade itself, and blue glaze and turquoise is embedded on the handle.
Nice.
Yeah, this is low-tech, guys. The grip of the sword is bound by silk. The sword measures 21.9 inches long, including a 3.3-inch handle hilt, and has a blade 1.8 inches wide. It weighs 30.9 ounces. That's pretty light.
That's light, yeah.
On one side of the blade, 2 columns of text are visible with a total of 8 characters near the hilt in ancient Chinese script. This particular script, known literally as birds and worms characters in English, is a variant of the Zhuangzi seal script that is very difficult to read. Initial analyses deciphered 6 of the 8 Chinese characters. They read, King of Yue made this sword for his personal use. The remaining 2 characters are likely the name of the king. The Yue state existed from 510 to 334 BC and was ruled by 9 kings. The identity of the king that owned the sword sparked debate among archaeologists and Chinese language scholars. After more than 2 months, the experts formed a consensus that the original owner of the sword was Gojian, making the sword around 2,500 years old.
That's awesome.
Gojian was a famous emperor in Chinese history who reigned over the Yue state during the spring and autumn period. This was a time marked by chaos within the Zhou dynasty and takes its name from the spring and autumn annals, which chronicled his period. The spring and autumn period was renowned for military expeditions. These conflicts led to the perfecting of weapons to the point that they were incredibly resistant and deadly, taking years to forge and lasting for centuries. The story of Gojuan and Fuchai, so the Watchers pulled up a picture of it. It's freaking beautiful. Look at that.
Wow. It's going down in the annals of history.
The annals of history.
Yeah, just under 2 pounds.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the story of Gojian and Fuchai, king of the Wu state, contending for hegemony, is famous throughout China. Although Gojian's kingdom was initially defeated by the state of Wu, Gojian led his army to victory 10 years later. So besides the historic value, many scholars have wondered how this sword could have remained rust-free in a humid environment for more than 2,000 years and how the delicate decorations were carved into the sword. The sword is still as sharp today as when it was originally crafted, and not a single spot of rust can be found. Researchers analyzed ancient bronze shards in the hope of finding a way to replicate the technology used to create the sword. They found that the sword is resistant to oxidation as a result of sulfation on the surface of the sword. This, combined with an airtight scabbard, caused the legendary sword to be found in pristine conditions. Tests also showed that the swordsmiths of the Wu and Yue regions of southern China during the spring and autumn period reached such a high level of metallurgy that they were able to incorporate rust-proof alloys into their blades, helping them survive the ages unblemished.
And airtight scabbards. Their scabbard technology was very amazing. Yeah. What material do they use to make an airtight scabbard?
I don't know.
Like we would do it with, plastic or something.
Yeah, but I loved that story, and the sword is absolutely beautiful. I recommend everybody look it up. It's spelled Goujian, Gojian or something like that. So
awesome. All right. Break time?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, we'll take a short break, and we'll come back and have some snake thoughts and talk about anomalies.
We're back, and I meant to tell you guys that I am going to play the Xinyang Serpent outro music again on this episode, and we won't be talking over it the entire time. Last time I asked Russ, we're going to do this real quick, right? Yeah. And then it went through the entire song.
Is that how it happened? I
Yes.
don't think that's how it really happened.
That's how it happened. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so we've had requests for that particular track. People want to hear it. We're working that out. We're going to figure that out if we can distribute some of these tracks or whatever, however we're going to do it. So
Yeah.
stay tuned on that. So I know some people want to hear some of the bumper music, and there was specific requests for the Shenyang DK Funk. So we'll figure it out and let you guys know somehow. And the watcher will tell you through the Facebook group or something.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a
Storm Area 51 update. We are officially not going to alien stock.
even if they want us to.
Yeah, which we haven't heard back from them yet. They said they would get back within 48 hours. Hasn't happened. Could mean they were just like, no, these guys suck. Or they're trying to put on a festival in less than a month, and that's a big...
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's going to work. But we're actually going to be in Vermont looking for standing stones and caves that Vikings built.
That's right.
So,
And
we won't even be around.
ancient stone mounds hidden in the mountainous forests of Vermont. So I definitely want to go back.
And visiting family.
Yeah, want to go back to the Smith Farm where we were one time.
Yeah, that's happening.
And maybe stopping in to see Soraya. Where did the road go?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a scheduling conflict.
So we can't storm.
We can't even. Yeah.
We can't storm Area 51, unfortunately for us. All right, so we got this soundbite that I can't remember his name now. What was his name?
Dave?
David?
David?
David? Yeah.
Let's see.
Is it David?
David.
Yeah, it's David.
David gets. Oh.
Yeah,
Never
don't dox
mind.
him. Don't dox him.
Didn't dox. David gets a lot.
Of sound bites to send to us. So here it is.
Cobras! That's great. It's in the soundboard.
It's in the soundboard now. Okay. So I just have this. I have one other story, but first let's go through this idea I was thinking about. And this is not really something that requires a lot of discussing, I don't think, but it just was occurring to me like, so we know that there have been experiments and efforts by major governments and probably across time, but specifically in the modern era, attempts at types of mind control, whether chemical or otherwise, right?
Propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda is one, but I'm talking about like chemical mind control, like the kind or psychological.
Like giving people drugs and telling them.
Yeah,
stuff.
There have just been that's MK Ultra type things. Where we have these intelligence agencies, and we know that's happened in the Soviet Union and various other places around the world where people have attempted to study mind control. And I mean, I think the Germans were doing it during. The Nazis. I shouldn't say Germans. The Nazis.
Yeah.
So this has been happening at least in the modern era. We know, and it was attempts at like not just propaganda, but real mind control. Where you actually are in control of somebody else's mind and can make them do things, no matter what. So I was thinking about that, and the idea also that it's been shown in multiple ways that. People can affect things like random number generators and stuff like that. So just imagine having a real, like what if one of the goals was for actual concrete hardcore mind control was to just affect reality. If you could mass produce some sort of mind control device and make a whole bunch of people believe something 100% to affect reality and change it that way. Mm-hmm. So that was just a snake thought that I had. I was just thinking about that could be one of the reasons for doing this. If you could actually, and maybe propaganda does it. Who knows?
Yeah. I was thinking about, like we talked about this before, the idea of something that was going to, like a comet or a meteor that was going to impact the Earth, and a bunch of people thinking about it.
Yeah. makes it
all
happen
at once. Or no, a bunch of people wanting it to
not happen.
Not happen.
Yeah.
Like, could that possibly change the reality?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. If you could figure out how to control people's minds, then maybe you could make your own reality.
Yeah. If you could make people really believe something, just believe it, sit there and believe it and think about it, then, I think back to the Art Bell experiment with the rain, where, and he had all those listeners and he was like, let's everybody think about rain for the Southwest. And then there was like floods for the next 2 days.
Yeah. Well, that changes the whole context of religious beliefs too. Because if you can get enough people believing that they'll go to some paradise after they die, can you change reality in another realm? Can you create a reality in a completely different universe?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you go to the place you thought about after you, like, everyone has their own place. Like, if you think that if atheists, when they die, that's it. Great job, atheists. People who believe in a heaven and hell go to one of those at the end of their life. And people who believe in like a nirvana oneness, they go to that.
Yeah, but I mean, it could work the other way too, whereas if enough people
you change it.
Believe that you do go somewhere, then everybody goes there.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about, was competing ideas of reality. And like,
yeah,
I don't know. In some ways that does happen, but it happens in ways that are mechanical and understandable, like large scale, like national elections, for example, is a type of enough people thinking the same thing more than the other side coming together and voting for this. And then you sort of change the direction of stuff, right? Whichever the way the direction is going. But those are understandable things about like where a bunch of people thinking the same way come together and change reality in that way. But I'm actually thinking of like mind control, where you could actually, if you could actually make people just believe something without having to spend all the work of propaganda and all that stuff, and that being nebulous and not everybody thinks the same way, resulting from propaganda. If you could just make everybody actually think the same way and change reality like that, that'd be a wild thing. So
you think that's why they experimented with it?
It could be one of the reasons, yeah.
Governments actually believe in, like, what do they call that whole? Why can't I think of it? Lost the word.
Governments actually believe in what?
Yeah, I can't think of the word.
Okay.
It's like the weird stuff,
The paranormal stuff?
Paranormal.
Yeah. Yes. There are parts of the government, that do. Remember when we were talking to Bosley and he talked about that? Especially when you get in the intelligence, you get up to the top of intelligence and you find that they all are interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
So. And those are the guys with black budgets and, like...
Maybe that's what was going on with that guy. Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he went on Joe Rogan, talked about going into Area 51.
Yeah. Yeah.
And working on these crazy machines. Like the whole idea of this, crazy alien technology that exists in this place, and all these people believe it, and they sort of...
Yeah,
kind of keep it secret, and so they got some Lazar is his name. Gotcha,
yeah,
Watcher.
Bob Lazar.
I know you're typing his name right now. Yes, Bob Lazar.
Just having the Watcher out there thinking it lets you know what it was.
Yeah, so they create this scenario where a bunch of people think that aliens landed and that there's some advanced technology there. And then they bring these engineers in to just look at some steel ball.
Wow.
And it starts doing stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And then they're studying that. They're like, okay, so you go in here. We're not going to tell you anything, but just figure out how this works.
Right.
And they start finding out that it has all this power and all this stuff. And then
just because
the government agents are in there like recording everything that it does.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, they're making it do that with their minds.
All these people that believe in alien tech are in there are actually making that steel ball like float.
Yeah.
Man, that would be an interesting way to build technology.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so
We should just start building instant elsewhere booths.
yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it works.
Yeah,
Trust me.
teleportation
You just gotta
totally
think,
works.
You got to think about it right. You got to wear the right clothes.
Yeah.
People just start going in there and
Yeah.
just like show up at another instant elsewhere booth.
Yeah. All right. I mean, that in that story, The Star's My Destination, where we get quant stuff from, the people were able to jaunt, is what they called it.
Yeah.
And you just thought about the place you wanted to be, and then you were there. But there was a particular way to do it, and you had to be trained, like sort of training people how to read when they're very young. They would train you how to do it, and there's a particular way you have to know location. You have to know where you are, and it has to be a 3D picture in your mind, an accurate 3D picture in your mind of where you are and of where you want to go. And then there's this little push, and then you're there.
Yeah.
And so, like, they had, of course, they had all these security problems because then you could just like jaunt into somebody's house and steal all their stuff and leave and jaunt back out. So security then was organized by like making things in places where people didn't actually know where they were. So you couldn't jaunt there.
Yeah.
So if you had a house, it was actually inside of a giant maze in some undisclosed area that only you knew exactly where it was in the giant maze. So you could jaunt in and out of your house,
Yeah.
but no one else could.
There was a movie that kind of took that idea. It was called Jumper. Mm-hmm. Really good movie.
Jumpers, yeah, that was a good
And the
movie.
guy, he goes into the bank, to like get a safety deposit box or whatever. And
Yeah.
he needs to be able to see inside the
Yeah.
bank vault.
Yeah.
I don't remember
And then
all the details, but he sees inside the bank vault.
Yeah.
And so that he can then go back to his apartment and then
Yeah. You just teleport.
in there.
Yeah.
That was a pretty cool movie.
Yeah.
Glorifying a thief, but anyway, it's cool.
So I've had this story on the back burner for a while. I've been thinking about when I was going to do it, but this seems like a good time. This is from ancient-origins.net. It's called An Unbreakable Story, the Lost Roman Invention of Flexible Glass. So I think we've mentioned this before, but this is the actual story. This is cool. Imagine a glass you can bend and then watch it return to its original form. A glass that you drop, but it does not break. Stories say that an ancient Roman glassmaker had the technology to create a flexible glass, a vitrium flexile, but a certain emperor decided the invention should not be. Flexible glass is allegedly a type of unbreakable glass that was invented during the Roman period. Man-made glass, as opposed to naturally occurring glass such as obsidian, is widely accepted to have been invented by the Phoenicians. Over the course of millennia, glassmakers honed their skills, improving the techniques used to produce the substance, as well as the glass itself. In the Roman Empire, glass became a commonly produced item, though special luxury glasses were also created. Arguably, one of the most intriguing of these glass types is the so-called flexible glass. So, tales of the famed Roman glass. Flexible glass is said to be a legendary lost invention dating to the reign of Roman Emperor Tiberius Caesar. Whilst no physical evidence of such a glass has been found so far, there are two main written sources attesting to its existence. One of these is Pliny the Elder's Natural History. So this guy, Pliny, is a respected source. At least in the sense of like him not being a liar or a fabricator. He believed things that we think are ridiculous now, but he was truthful as far as people can tell. Whilst the other is the Satyricon, commonly attributed to the Roman courtier Petronius. Whilst Pliny's work is encyclopedic in nature, that of Petronius is a piece of satire showing how this incredible story was picked up by writers of different genres. In Natural History, Pliny reports that a flexible glass was made by a glassmaker during the time of Tiberius Caesar. Instead of gaining the favor of the Roman emperor, said craftsman had his workshop shut down. This was meant to prevent the value of precious metals, i.e. gold, silver, and copper, from being depreciated by this new material. A similar story is said to have been reported by Cassius Dio and Suetonius. I think that's how you say that. Pliny expresses his doubts regarding the veracity of this story as he mentions that, quote, this story, however, was for a long time more widely spread than well authenticated. Petronius' telling of the story in his Satyricon, on the other hand, may be described as a more dramatized version of the story told by Pliny. In the satirist's account, the man who invented the flexible glass was granted an audience with the Roman emperor to show his work. After Tiberius examined the glass cup, he handed it back to the glassmaker, who proceeded to throw it with all his might to the floor. The emperor was shocked at what happened, but the man calmly picked up the cup from the ground, showing the emperor that it was only dented. The glassmaker then took a little hammer to beat the glass, and in no time the cup regained its original shape. The Roman glassmaker was confident that he had impressed the emperor and was probably waiting to be rewarded for his ingenious creation. When the emperor asked if anybody else knew how to make this kind of flexible glass, the craftsman answered with a negative. Instead of receiving the reward he had hoped for, the glassmaker was executed, thus taking the secret of making flexible glass with him to the grave. The reason for this was that this Roman invention would cause gold to be devalued, as mentioned by Pliny. Today, the story of the Roman flexible glass is mainly treated in the same manner as it had been by Pliny, i.e. with much doubt. Nevertheless, there have been some speculations on how this glass may have been made. One of these, for instance, is that the Roman glassmaker had somehow had access to boric acid or borax, both of which can be found naturally. By adding a small percent of boric acid to the glass mixture, the end result would be something that was relatively unbreakable. It may be added that borax was imported from the East into Europe on a regular basis during the Middle Ages and was used by goldsmiths as a flux. Boric acid could also be found in the steam vents of the Tuscan Maremma to the north of Rome, though this was supposedly only realized during the 19th century. Nevertheless, it is possible that the glassmaker may have stumbled upon this source by chance. In any case, it is likely that the recipe for Roman flexible glass, if it did exist at all, will continue to elude us and remain a lost invention of the Romans.
So wait, you can add borax to glass and make it relatively unbreakable. Why are my wine glasses not made of that?
They probably are.
I don't know.
It's the difference between like plate glass, like old plate windows that are easily shatterable, and then like the newer glass, which is much more resistant to shattering.
Tempered. Or he just made plastic.
That's what I think.
Plexiglass.
Plastic.
Made some plastic, and he was like, yeah, it's glass.
Yeah, because it's clear and kind of, yeah. That's what I thought too, is it sounds like plastic. I mean, the Romans knew about bitumen. Let's see. Watcher says a standard borosilicate glass, like the brand Pyrex, is more thermal shock resistant and has a higher chemical durability when compared to soda line silicate glass. It is not shatterproof, nor is any glass composition for that matter. So,
not unbreakable,
right?
Says Watcher.
Not dentable either. That's the point.
Yeah.
Denting something and then being able to pop it back out, that's plastic.
Rubbermaid.
So we know that they had access to, you know, petrol products like bitumen, tar. Mm-hmm. So I assume that you could maybe figure out a way to make some kind of...
It's still strange. I mean, you don't need a hammer to hammer out the dents in your Rubbermaid.
Right.
In your plastic cups.
Yeah. That was the satire version of the story. Pliny's, and that was the one where the guy gets executed on the spot, but the emperor's like, cut off his head so that no one else can do this. Whereas Pliny's version was the guy's workshop was shut down because he wasn't killed or anything.
It's ridiculous anyway, because if you... I mean, I guess the emperor could be just a fool, but, you know, if you had access to a new material, you wouldn't need your gold to be worth anything.
Right.
If that material was worth more than gold, then you would be the richest emperor ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't understand it either.
Steal
but
his technology.
It's just classic monarchical bullshit to me is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Really, the monarch was like,
Cobras!
He thought he was like a...
like
a warlock.
Snake Bro shows up in there. Yeah. But I've come across the references to that story over the years and just always thought that was interesting, that it sounds like plastic to me. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you told that story about him getting killed.
Yeah. That's the satirical version. Yeah. All right.
You can take that one off the list.
Snake list. That's right.
The old rattle.
Okay, so I've been reading this book called Unexplained! And I have a bunch of stuff I want to go through, and it's basically anomalies. It's all very interesting, but disjointed and scattered stuff. So,
cool.
Do you have anything you want to talk about before we get into all that stuff?
Nah, not really.
Oh, I thought you said you had a bunch of snake thoughts you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I was just goosing you.
All right.
No, I do, but I'd rather just go with that.
Okay. So, what we're going to start with here I'm gonna try to move from across these phenomena, and they're basically, so the first phenomenon we're going to start with is weird clouds. Okay, and I know that sounds kind of boring, but it's not. This is actually really, really strange stuff here. In a letter published in a 1932 issue of Science, John Zeleny recalled a strange sight he had witnessed on a clear summer night at Hutchinson, Minnesota, some 35 years ago. A solitary, brilliantly luminous cumulus cloud rose majestically from the eastern horizon, he wrote, shone with a uniform, steady, vivid whitish light and passed directly over the town. When the cloud was overhead, a great shower of insects descended to earth, covering the ground all around to the number of about 50 to 100 per square foot. These insects proved to be a species of Hemiptera and were non-luminous. That same summer, if Zeleny was correct in thinking the episode to have taken place in 1897, numerous small blood-colored clouds filled the sky over Macerata, Italy. An hour later, a storm broke during which thousands of seeds fell. Unfamiliar to local people, they were eventually identified as being those of a kind of tree only found in Central Africa.
What color were the seeds?
I don't know.
The seeds were not red.
The insects were non-luminous. Although I have studied the skies for many years, Charles Tilden Smith wrote in the British scientific journal Nature, I have never seen anything like this before. It was two triangle-shaped clouds in the shaped shadows in the clouds. These dark patches maintained their stationary position even as the clouds rolled on. To all appearances, he said, each was a heavy shadow cast upon a thin veil of clouds by some unseen object. Pyramids in the sky.
Yeah. Giant triangles in the sky.
This sighting occurred on April 18th, 1912 at Chisbury, Wiltshire. After the commencement of the flying saucer era 35 years later, it would have been noted in the UFO literature as yet another instance in which UFOs had hidden themselves in the clouds. As early as 1919, in Book of the Damned, Anomalous chronicler Charles Fort was speculating, if a large substantial mass, or superconstruction, should enter this Earth's atmosphere, it is our acceptance that it would sometimes look like a cloud. And he's right. If once something enormous is moving into the atmosphere, it gets surrounded by all kinds of vapor effects.
It's like freezing cold on one side and burning up on the other side.
Yeah, like in the movie Independence Day, they did a great depiction of it. Remember that it looks like there's this exploding storm cloud coming in, and then eventually it gets low enough to where all that stuff blows away, and you see it's this gigantic disk. But before that, it just looks like a humongous front as it's coming into the atmosphere. So Fort's prescient remark anticipated a later phenomenon that would be dubbed the cloud cigar. Cloud cigars figured in a number of UFO reports from the late 1940s. What may have been the first was reported in Toronto in November 1947, up to the present. Usually, such objects have been associated with smaller disc-shaped structures. Thus, cloud cigars have sometimes been known as motherships, quote unquote. Just before the onset of the Great Autumn of 1954, a UFO wave in France, several witnesses, among them a businessman, 2 police officers, and an army engineer, recounted a spectacular observation of an extraordinary object over the town of Vernon. Merchant Bernard Misery, wow, that's a terrible name, who watched it from his driveway at 1 a.m. on August 23rd, described it as an enormous vertical cigar, 300 feet long, hovering above the north bank of the Seine River, 1,000 feet away. According to his testimony, suddenly from the bottom of the cigar came an object like a horizontal disc, which dropped at first in free fall, then slowed, suddenly swayed and dived horizontally across the river towards me, becoming very luminous, before vanishing in the southwest. Over the next 45 minutes, other similar discs dropped out of the cigar. By this time, the mothercraft had lost its luminosity and disappeared into the darkness. So we're talking about mass sightings of this kind of stuff.
That's crazy.
Let's see.
So, did the cigar mothership start out looking like a cloud?
It came out of the cloud glowing.
Okay.
And then as it was dropping discs out of the bottom part of it, the glow slowly faded, and then it disappeared into the night again.
Yeah, that's cool.
That would be cool to see. Let's see. And these aren't that old either. Let's see. Okay, so though no clouds are mentioned in connection with this sighting, It set the scene for even a more spectacular event. This one, with hundreds of witnesses, took place 3 weeks later on September 14th in the southwest of France along the Atlantic coast. At 5 p.m., while working with his men in a field, a wealthy farmer who lived near Saint-Proant saw a regular shape, something like a cigar or a carrot, drop rapidly out of a thick bank of clouds. The object, essentially horizontal, tipped slightly towards the earth, was luminous and rigid, and its movements did not correlate with the clouds just above it. It looked, Georges Fortin said, like a gigantic machine surrounded by mists. It ceased its descent, then moved into a vertical position and became motionless. By now, citizens of half a dozen local villages, as well as farmers living in the region, were watching with awe. White smoke, like a vapor trail, began to pour out of the bottom of the object and head straight down before slowing and ascending to circle the cigar in ascending spirals. By the time it got to the top, the wind had blown away all the smoke or vapor, revealing the source, a small metallic disc which shone like a mirror and reflected light from the larger object. The disc darted about the area, sometimes moving with great speed, sometimes stopping abruptly, before finally streaking towards the cigar and disappearing into the lower part. Perhaps a minute later, the carrot leaned over as it began to move, accelerated, and disappeared into the clouds in the distance, Fortin told investigators. Having resumed its original position, point forward, the whole thing had lasted about half an hour. Other witnesses up and down the valley confirmed the account. Meteorologists confirmed that no tornadoes or other unusual meteorological activity was occurring at the time of the sighting, though it is hard to imagine how, even if it was, that could account for what the observers were reporting. A 300-foot-long, dull gray cigar-shaped machine emerged from a cloud during a rainstorm over Cressy, Tasmania on October 4th, 1960. Among those who saw it was the Reverend Lionel Browning, an Anglican minister and Tasmanian secretary of the World Council of Churches. The point of all that is like showing you that these people are
credentials.
Yeah, that he's not somebody who's likely to make up things that are going to make everyone think he's nuts. It's just, it's strange. As he and his wife watched this astonishing sight, they estimated the object to be 4 miles away and 300 feet off the ground. 5 or 6 domed discs, approximately 30 feet in diameter, shot out of the clouds just above and behind the cigar. They headed towards it like flat stones skipping along water, which is exactly how Kenneth Arnold described the motion of the discs he saw over Mount Rainier, Washington, on June 24th, 1947. After several seconds, the ship, accompanied by these saucers, reversed the way it came, Browning reported. It was gone from sight after 30 seconds. It appears the ship sailed on for some seconds unaware that it had shed its protection. Possibly when this was discovered, the saucers were called to the mothership and the objects then moved back into the cover of the rainstorm. So it's like it was moving with the storm and then suddenly it comes out of it where everyone could see it and all this stuff is happening and then it like backs back into the clouds after a minute.
That's crazy.
Okay, let's see. What do we got here?
We need somebody like Thomas Briggs to take all these things, their locations and their dates and times, and like figure out some pattern.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, figure out the patterns of what's going on.
When and where the next one's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have the next thing. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So, falls from the sky of inorganic matter. So, one of the reasons why I wanted to go through all this stuff is because this book is a great compilation of a whole bunch of things that I've seen across many decades of reading about these kinds of things. And all this stuff is sort of floating in the back of my mind when we're talking about other stuff. So I kind of want all the, everybody in the snake forest to also have these things floating in the back of their minds when we're talking about things, right? Because knowing that there have been reports about this kind of stuff is, I don't know, in some ways it can change or shape the way that you look at other. It's surprising how they connect, I guess is what I'm getting at here. Okay. Falls from the sky of inorganic matter. And he also later is, this one's falls from the sky inorganic, and then there's an organic one.
Yeah.
Okay. For as long as human beings have been keeping historical records, all kinds of objects, living and otherwise, have been reported to fall out of the sky. Usually, though not always, these falls take place in the midst of a furious storm. On occasion, however, a fall may occur out of a clear sky. The first scriptards explained falls as a misunderstanding of a fundamental process of nature, which was that rain triggered the spontaneous generation out of mud, slime, and dust of things, especially living things already on the ground. Right? So this is the ancient Skirptard explanation for this, when they still believed in spontaneous generation, that there's just mud and things in the sky, and those just turned into fishes and frogs and things before they fell down, because that's what they turned into once they got on the ground anyway, and everybody knew that. Retarded. Stop being retarded. So he's basically saying that was the skeptical explanation back in the day. And there's actually writings where you can read them, this ancient skeptics being like, oh my God, everyone knows that spontaneous generation causes worms to appear and stuff. So they're not actually raining out of the sky. It's just mud turning into worms in the sky, guys. Okay, so let's see. This eventually evolved into a more realistic hypothesis, namely that naive witnesses falsely associated the fall of rain with the appearances of animals, vegetable matter, artifacts, or other inorganic materials in the rain's aftermath. These things had been there all along, but the rain had driven or washed them into view. So now they're saying, well, that didn't really fall out of the sky. It's just like, and we know this, like you get a good hard rain and earthworms will come up out of the ground, right? To get away from the water or whatever. But so he goes, in due course, after it finally proved futile to dispute reliable observations, some by scientists, of actual objects falling, conventional opinion bowed to the superiority of eyewitness testimony over armchair dismissal. But conventionalists were ready with another explanation. This one held that waterspouts, tornadoes, and whirlwinds pick up materials and deposit them somewhere else. Consequently, though falls are real enough, they are merely curious and not extraordinary. That strong winds rip objects off the ground and drop there somewhere else is, of course, beyond dispute. That such weather phenomena account for most anomalous falls, on the other hand, is decidedly less certain. What makes anomalous falls so puzzling is their strange selectivity. Violent storms drop everything they pick up. Most anomalous falls drop only one thing and the rest a very few things. Often, too, the volume of material is so staggering that its disappearance from one place, even if a place could be found where much of it was held, would not go unnoticed. Some falls go on for hours with the material falling in a steady stream over a significant area of ground. Of the two types of falls, inorganic and organic, however, those involving inorganic matter, especially if that matter consists of dust or ash, are the more amenable to mundane accounting. Though many falls of sulfur turn out to be of pollen, a few reports, if they are to be believed, cannot be so explained. In other words, they really may be of a sulfur or sulfurous compound. William R. Corliss of the multi-volume Sourcebook Project remarks that a storm-driven fall of sulfur, a substance, quote, rarely found in surface deposits where winds could pick it up, would seem to be very unlikely, though not impossible, unquote. Yet tales of burning sulfur, if true, post a significant anomaly. One such case was reported in the American Journal of Science. So this is from the journal. In March last, in 1832, there fell in the fields of the village of Korniov, Russia, a combustible substance of a yellowish color, at least 2 inches thick and covering a superficies of between 600 and 700 square feet. The inhabitants at first thought it was snow, but on examination it appeared to have the properties of cotton, having on being torn the same tenacity. But on being put into a vessel full of water, it assumed the consistency of rosin. On being put into the fire, in its primitive state, it burnt and sent forth a flame like spirits of wine, but in its resinous state, it boiled on the fire without becoming inflamed, probably because it was mixed with some portion of snow from which it had been taken. After a more minute examination, the rosin had the color of amber, was elastic like Indian rubber, and smelt like prepared oil mixed with wax. And this stuff rained out of the sky.
You can tell they had a different technology going on back then. Like everybody knows what prepared rosin mixed with wax is, or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the 1800s.
Yeah.
An even stranger event took place on October 18th, 1867, when residents of Thames Ditton, Surrey, in England, were startled by the appearance of a shower of fire in the evening sky. The light it cast was brilliant for the next 10 minutes while it lasted. Next morning, it was found that the water butts and puddles in the upper part of the village were thickly covered with a deposit of sulfur. That was in Simmons' Monthly Meteorological Magazine. On the evening of April 13th, 1879, snow fell in the eastern Pennsylvania cities of Allentown, Easton, and Reading. interspersed with the ordinary flakes with a large amount of substance that looked and smelled like sulfur, half an inch deep in some places. Contemporary press accounts noted that small quantities were scraped together and set on fire, and they burned as readily as sulfur and emitted the same fumes.
So aren't there's some
Could be volcanoes causing that
biblical references to sulfur raining down from the sky or something like that? I'm sort of having a...
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. That stuff stinks.
Those stories stink.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's keep doing more of that.
Yeah.
After this snake break.
And we are back. First segment of the second hour here at Brothers of the Serpent podcast in the Tangent Cube. Keeping the Enlils of the world awake by reason of all of our babble. And
Yes.
got a lot of babble here about weird stuff. This is the kind of thing I think all anomalists should know. It's like these things are... this is the kind of stuff that I think of in my mind, and this may not actually be happening, but in my mind, I'm thinking Kyle's frustrated because he can't solve any of the mysteries. Right? I'm like reading this stuff, and he's like, he can't do anything with it. It's a puzzle that you can't work on. But I love this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, I love it too.
all right. Stones falling and tossed. You hear that?
That's my boy.
Oh.
He's out there playing in the yard.
Wow. Okay, cool. I was like, where is that coming from? I mean, there is a thing in here about weird baby sounds in the woods, but I just hadn't gotten to that yet.
I'm getting
Okay.
used to it.
A larger, more significant category of anomalous falls of inorganic material concerns non-meteoritic rocks and stones. One dramatic instance took place in Hungary in 1841, according to contemporary press reports. The shower fell so thick over so large a tract, according to the Augsburg Gazette, which had dispatched a scientific correspondent from Vienna to the site, that the number of stones which fell are computed at 350,000 million.
350 billion.
Surely a considerable exaggeration for what must in any event have been an impressive abundance of stones. The account continues, they varied in size from a hazelnut down to a poppy seed, but most of them were about the size of a pea. The composition of stones besides flint, lime, and clay earth containing oxidant of iron. The stones were quite cold, and though the night was very calm, they fell almost at the angle of 45 degrees.
Wow.
So that some other power than gravity must have been working on them as well as their gravity. So it's like totally dead calm, there's no wind, and they're all
That's
raining in sideways.
they were being. I mean, it sounds like they were being thrown from somewhere, or they were coming in.
Yeah.
But they were cold.
Right.
Is it possible that a meteor could break up, but then actually cool down? Like the little small stones
I don't
could
know,
actually
yeah.
cool down.
It's crazy.
It went through an ice storm up in the sky.
A similar phenomenon occurred near Utica, New York in the late spring and early summer of 1921. For several weeks, the press wires reported, stones as large as billiard balls have been dropping on the house, apparently out of the clear sky. They fall perpendicularly as if dropped, not thrown. All efforts to explain their source have been in vain. This is happening for several weeks. In June of 1870, stones are said to have fallen from 2 p.m. until sundown on a district of Argentina. Vast numbers of small black stones are said to have fallen on Birmingham, England in August of 1858 and again at Wolverhampton in June 1860. Both incidents took place during violent storms, though the source and sheer quantity of the material remains a mystery. Anomalous stone falls, throwings is perhaps a more accurate term, are often associated with poltergeist manifestations. In a number of cases, the unexplained movement of stones, pebbles, and rocks comprises the bulk or even the entirety of the poltergeist phenomenon. As the late parapsychologist Dr. D. Scott Rogo remarked, rock-throwing poltergeists represent a specific type of spookery. They can make the stones shower from the sky, or they will simply pelt the building. The rocks will even fall inside the house. It is not odd for the rocks to fly abnormally slow, zigzag in flight, or even make 90-degree turns in midair. Thanks to Charles Fort, who chronicled it in his widely read New Lands in 1923, the most famous instance is the one that happened in Chico, California in the early 1920s. In November 1921, J.W. Charge, the owner of a grain warehouse along the Southern Pacific Railroad tracks in Chico, complained to City Marshal J.A. Ted Peck that an unseen someone was daily hurling rocks at his building. Taking this to be a harmless prank, Peck paid no attention until March 9th, 1922, when stones and rocks ranging in size from peas to baseballs came down on the warehouse. The fall continued intermittently all day. The rocks struck the roofs of warehouse belonging to Charge and a J.H. Priel. At one point, a man named Frank Lyons climbed up to the roof but had to retreat under merciless pelting. Charge on the ground was struck on the leg. According to the Chico Record newspaper, Fire Chief C.E. Tovey and Traffic Officer J.J. Corbett had the scare of their lives while prowling about the Charge warehouse in an endeavor to sight the direction from which the rocks came. They had just approached the sound end of the warehouse and were looking skyward when a fair-sized boulder struck the wooden wall above them with a mighty force and rebounded to the ground at their feet, leaving a dent where it had struck the timber. A dragnet through several surrounding blocks failed to flush out the rock thrower. After effecting considerable destruction to its original targets, the two warehouses, the stone attacks expanded to nearby buildings and a cluster of houses along the tracks. Meantime, on March 23rd, an anonymous letter to Marshal Peck, allegedly from the culprit, boasted that he had invented the device responsible and now would cease tormenting fellow citizens with it. Nonetheless, the incidents continued into April amid frantic efforts by police and others to catch the individual or individuals presumed responsible. At one point, 3 airplanes flew over the site in search of the elusive man with a catapult. Among the outsiders who arrived to probe the events was Vincent Jones, vice president of the California Society for Psychical Research. He reported witnesses who have seen the missiles before they hit the building testify that they seemed to come perpendicularly from above and were first discerned at a distance some 40 feet away. Fort asked a friend, San Francisco-based writer Miriam Allen DeFord, to go to Chico to look into the matter personally. There she, in her words, saw a stone fall from some invisible point in the sky and land gently at my feet.
Gently?
Yeah, sometimes they slow down before they hit in these weird poltergeist cases. Subsequently, the writer and critic Anthony Boucher would note that he met DeFord when I investigated a similar stonefall case in Oakland, California in 1943. We compared our notes and found our experiences almost identical. So except for catching Fort's attention and thereby entering anomaly immortality, the Chico episode was a fairly ordinary instance of what some call a rock-throwing poltergeist, an international phenomenon with a long history. So then he goes through a bunch of poltergeist cases here where rocks are falling inside the house and breaking things, and they just show up near the ceiling and fall to the floor and smash something. You know, and it happens for weeks at a time, and people are picking, and they're like all these round, and sometimes they're identified as rocks specifically from a river or creek nearby, but sometimes they're not from anywhere near around there. Let's see.
The Watcher had a pretty good skirp derp of the the pebbles. He says, so a meteor flash boiled a glacier and rocks exploded outward. Cold rocks.
Cold rocks
Came in
explode
at 45 degrees.
That's great.
That's great. Hey, you know, we were just talking about the Carolina Bays, man. They can go a long way.
Let's see.
That's got to be what happened.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Trying to say I can't do anything with these stories.
It's true.
I can.
Spokane, Washington, late summer of 1977. Stones the size of golf balls and of no apparent origin fell on the front lawn and through the front windows of a family residence. Some of the stones came down at relatively low speeds while others traveled at high velocities. When police Captain Charles Crabtree climbed to the roof for a better view, the 2 stones landed near him. With a 15-foot overhang protecting the porch and 50-foot tall trees in the lawn, the police could only deduce that a launching device was hurling the rocks, but surveillance from ground and air failed to detect anyone or anything responsible. So in other words, there's no way to sort of toss rocks at the house by hand. You would have to be so far off to get them to come all over all these trees and stuff that you would need to have a
And
catapult.
they'd still need to be able to get under the awning.
Right. In mid-1982, Richard and Mary Birkbigler began building a 4,400 square foot house surrounded by hundreds of square yards of bush, cactus, and underbrush on the rural northern outskirts of Tucson, Arizona. With three of their children, ages between 15 and 20, they moved out to the trailer house on the property, living there until September 1983 when they took up residence in the still uncompleted house. Within days, odd events were taking place, starting with knockings on the front door. No knocker was ever spotted, though the family sped to the door and even searched for one outside. Still, they assumed that a vagrant was playing tricks on them. Then the weirdness escalates. Late one afternoon, a flurry of 5 stones of no visible origin hit the house and a van parked in the adjoining driveway. After that, in the coming days and weeks, attacks resumed at 5 to 15-minute intervals, sometimes continuing for as long as 2 or 3 hours. Often they would stop only when the family turned out all the lights and retired. In early November, after repeated searches by family and friends failed to uncover the guilty individual or individuals, the sheriff's department entered the investigation. Deputies in a helicopter patrolled the site repeatedly. They got a helicopter out there. That tells you it's pretty serious. Again, without solving the mystery, the attacks only grew more intense. On Sunday, November 27th, after especially relentless bombardment, the family and friends broke into 2 teams, one led by son Rick to search the northern end of the property, the other led by an uncle on the southern end. In the darkness of mid-evening, they set out armed with flashlights. In short order, one of the team members in the latter front was struck on the jaw by a rock. When the group fled to take shelter behind the house, the uncle called to them that he and his fellows had trapped the prowler in some bushes 25 feet away. Rick and his friends rushed to the site. When beams of light directed to the bushes, there was nothing to be seen, though the onlookers could hear rustling sounds. Suddenly, 8 rocks sailed out of the bush. One struck the uncle and knocked him unconscious. Some of the group picked up their own stones and rocks and threw them back at full speed. Nobody escaped from the bushes. Then the searchers, carrying the dazed uncle, returned to find shelter in the house. It was just like the bush was throwing rocks with its branches, Rick said later. Investigator Scott Rogo would observe the clump of brush actually grew out of a small knoll above the little trail Rick's uncle was following. I conducted several experiments there and was able to determine that rocks could not be thrown through the brush. You had to stand up and throw the rocks over the brush. Since both Rick and his uncle were focusing their flashlights on the brush, they certainly could have seen anyone cavorting about in this way.
That's crazy.
All right, let's get to the organic matter falls.
We have underestimated bushes.
Clearly, some bushes hate us. Okay, falls from the sky of organic matter. As a heavy rain fell and strong wind blew, a curious event took place at Mountain Ash. Wow. Glamorganshire? Glamorganshire, Wales, late on the morning of February 9th, 1859. Numerous residents, including members of the clergy, witnessed this. One observer, John Lewis, provided this account not long afterwards to a correspondent for the Annual Register. I was getting out a piece of timber for the purpose of setting it for the saw when I was startled by something falling all over me, down my neck, on my head, and on my back. On putting my hand down my neck, I was surprised to find that they were little fish. By this time, I saw the whole ground covered with them. I took off my hat, the brim of which was full of them. They were jumping all about. They covered the ground in a long strip of about 80 yards by 12 as we measured afterwards. The shed was covered with them, and the chutes were quite full of them. My mates and I might have gathered a bucketful of them, scraping with our hands. We did gather a great many, about a bucketful, and threw them into the rain pool, where some of them now still are. There were 2 showers with an interval of about 10 minutes, and each shower lasted about 2 minutes or thereabouts. The time was 11 a.m. The morning up train to Aberdare was just then passing. It was not blowing very hard, but uncommonly wet. They came down with the rain as if in a body. Another witness, the Reverend John Griffith, collected some specimens, the largest of which was 5 inches long. Falls of fish, and as we shall see of other animals, as well as organic matter generally, have been remarked upon for many centuries. The first known printed reference appears in Pliny's Natural History. Again, we're at Pliny. He keeps coming up here. In common with some subsequent would-be explainers, he doubted that living things actually fell, presumably reasoning that since fish do not live in the sky, fish cannot fall from the sky. It's impeccable reasoning, Pliny. In his view, the creatures were already present on the ground, where, in point of fact, they do not live either, as dust and slime that, when exposed to vigorous spring rains, sprouted into animals, which then returned to dust and slime with the onset of winter. In recent centuries, some theorists have held that a hard rain drives small animals from their usual hiding places. Thus, the impression that the animals fell in the rain is a delusion. No doubt that happens sometimes, and that is why we here concern ourselves mostly with witnessed falls. Other quote-unquote explanations need not concern the serious inquirer. A particularly notorious example is a British museum scientist's suggestion that the mountain ash fall recounted above resulted from the dumping of a pail of fish on someone's head. Classic script artery right there. A massive fall of crabs and periwinkles near Worcester, England in 1881 was attributed to a crazed, though untraceable, fishmonger. Today, hardly anyone disputes the occurrence of falls. The debate instead centers on how anomalous their causes are. For those to whom falls are a mere curiosity of nature, such events happen when waterspouts or tornadoes carry animals from a nearby body of water and dump them on land. While superficially plausible, this explanation does not begin to deal with some of the central and thoroughly bizarre aspects of the phenomenon. With his characteristic succinct wit, Charles Fort defined the shortcomings of this view. Quote, "Coffins have come down from the sky. Also, as everyone knows, silk hats and horse collars and pajamas. But these things have come down at the time of a whirlwind. The two statements that I start with are that no shower exclusively of coffins, nor of marriage certificates, nor of alarm clocks has been recorded. But that showers exclusively of living things are common, and yet the explanations by orthodox scientists who accept that showers of living things have occurred is that the creatures were the products of whirlwinds. The explanation is that little frogs, for instance, fall from the sky unmixed with anything else because in a whirlwind the creatures were segregated by differences in specific gravity. But when a whirlwind strikes a town, away go detachables in a monstrous mixture. And there is no findable record of wash tubs coming down in one place, all the town's cats in one falling battle that lumps its infelicities in another place, and all the kittens coming down somewhere else in a distant bunch that meows for its lump of mothers."
He just destroyed that script art.
Marriage certificates and alarm clocks. The truly anomalous falls usually consist of one species of animal or organic material. In other words, other species of animals do not rain down with fish or frogs. But if they do, it is only a very small number of other species. Mud, sand, plant life, and debris such as a whirlwind picks up as it passes over a lake, creek, river, or sea are not to be found. The selectivity is such that often the falling animals are not only of the same species, but of the same age. In many cases, moreover, there are vast numbers of them. On September 23rd, 1973, for example, tens of thousands of toads fell on Brignoles, France, during what was described as a, quote, freak storm, unquote. And they were all very young toads. In September 1922, young toads fell for 2 days on another French village, Chalon-sur-Saône. Between 7 and 8 a.m. on October 23rd, 1947, wildlife biologist A.D. Bajkov and residents of Marksville, Louisiana, witnessed the fall of many thousands of fish, which landed, cold and even frozen in some cases, on a strip 75 feet wide and 1,000 feet long. Weather conditions were foggy but otherwise calm. There was no rain or wind or storm, and just fish rain out of the sky on this strip. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Which makes this episode unusual but not unprecedented. Most falls take place during storms. Another fall of frozen fish occurred on December 22nd, 1955, when one smashed through the windshield of a car occupied by two men driving to work near Alexandria, Virginia. Traffic was light and they were nowhere near an underpass. I mean, like talking about a bridge, I guess he's saying. They couldn't have fallen off of a bridge. From the damage done, a photograph appears in the same day's Washington Evening Star. The fish, apparently a large carp, fell from some considerable height. The animals that fall may or may not be known to the area. The Marksville fish were, according to Bajkov, identical to those found in local waters. In Science, the Science Journal, J. Hedgepath recorded a brief fall he had witnessed in Guam in 1936, noting that one of the specimens, which was identified as the tench, which, to my knowledge, is common only to the freshwaters of Europe. The presence of this species at a locale so remote from its normal habitat is worthy of note, unquote. Sometimes the animals cannot be identified. When fish fell on Montgomery County, California in February of 1890, they proved to be of, according to one who saw them and wrote up the event, a species altogether unknown here, unquote. The people of Clifton, Indiana did not recognize the brown worms that fell on them one day in February of 1892, and neither did the editor of Insect Life, who came to investigate. On occasion, the falling animals arrive in peculiar conditions. At Nokalhati Factory, India, on February 19th, 1830, a great quantity of fish descended from the sky. Writing in American Journal of Science, M. Princip reported, quote, "The fish were all dead. Most of them were very large. Some were fresh, others rotted and mutilated. They were seen at first in the sky like a flock of birds descending rapidly to the ground. There was rain drizzling at the time, but no storm," unquote. Some of the fish had no heads. Thousands of dead and dry fish landed on Futtepur, India, in mid-May of 1831. In a fall that lasted 10 minutes, sand eels, stiff, hard, and dead, plummeted to earth near Hendon, England on August 24th, 1918, and some broke when they hit the ground. So they're like desiccated, dried out. Charles Fort, who found the phenomenon endlessly fascinating, collected some 294 accounts of falls of organic materials. Since his death in 1932, of course, many more have occurred, and other instances that took place before then have also come to light. What follows are examples of the kinds of things and materials that figure in fall reports. Okay. Fish. Norfolk, Virginia, May 17th, 1853. During an evening hailstorm, numerous catfish, some measuring a foot in length, fell in different sections of the city, and some of the fields were literally strewed with them. Hundreds were picked up in the morning. From the Gettysburg Star and Banner in Pennsylvania. Carroll Parish, Louisiana, mid-May 1872. A heavy storm visited that parish, and during the storm, fish bones fell to the ground by the millions. These bones seem to have come from an exceedingly large black cloud. The shower of bones was attended by a very heavy fall of rain. This strange phenomenon is extended over a belt of country 10 miles in width by many miles in length. Specimens have been shown to experienced coast fishermen and also to learned ichthyologists, but they are not able to ascertain what particular kind of fish the bones belong to. Just fucking fish bones falling out of the sky. That sounds like the end of the world, right? Just like skeletons falling out of the sky.
That's crazy.
Arkansas, June 28. Let's see. Near Union Springs, Alabama. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Okay, near Union Springs, Alabama, October 12th, 1882. S.P. Thompson, one of our leading prairie planners, assures us that he saw 3 fish of the perch variety fall into his front yard during a shower of rain. Mr. T gathered up the fish, which were still alive, notwithstanding their long and rapid journey through space towards the center of gravity. And after satisfying himself that they were only ordinary perch, placed them in an adjacent stream where they swam off. Mr. Thompson said he is not a natural philosopher enough to explain this strange occurrence, but he is absolutely certain that the fish did fall out of the clouds. Seymour, Indiana, August 1st, 1888. During a heavy storm Wednesday night, a large number of fish of a variety unknown here, some of them 4 inches in length, fell in this neighborhood. The occurrence excited a good deal of curiosity, but no one has been able to explain the phenomenon. Nashville, Tennessee, late January 1891. A singular phenomena was observed in connection with a heavy fall of snow. Large quantities of small fishes came down with the snow. Like, with the snow? And many localities of the ground was literally covered with these fish. The largest were nearly 2 inches in length. Emporia, Kansas, June 30th, 1893. A very heavy fall of rain occurred here. Small fish fell in the midst of the heaviest showers. One of the largest picked up by E.A. Tobias in his front yard was a well-developed black bass about 3 inches in length, which, though at first it showed but little life, once placed into a jar of water, soon recovered and is now as lively as any of his companions in an aquarium of goldfish at the residence of ex-Governor C.V. Eskridge. Queensland, Australia, late April 1906. During the remarkable thunderstorms last week, an extraordinary phenomenon at a place called Cooper's Plains near Brisbane took place. In the midst of the rain, there suddenly fell from the skies a large number of young fish. The fish fell at first in 2s and 3s, but subsequently came down in dozens until a large area of ground was strewn with live fish measuring from 1.5 inches to 3 inches in length. Experts in the district describe the fish as a variety of freshwater never before seen near Brisbane.
That's crazy.
Teresa, New York, July 16th, 1913. A peculiar phenomenon occurred during the electrical storm Wednesday evening. Hundreds of small fish, mostly shiners, were picked up by the villagers after the storm had passed. The water fell in torrents, the storm resembling a cloudburst. One person picked up 7 of the little fish in his dooryard. Fort Worth, Texas, May 8th, 1985. As he was working in his backyard, 3 or 4 fish, each 2 inches long, dropped at Louis Castrano's feet. More followed, 34 fish in all. The fall occurred after a dark cloud passed overhead. United Press International. This is in Fort Worth. It's pretty close. Fish and frogs. Collin County, Texas, May 1899. A peculiar phenomenon occurred west and northwest of McKinney. Fish and frogs fell from the sky and in some places almost covered the ground. This occurred in the afternoon when a heavy thunderstorm drenched the county. After it had passed, the ground was strewn with thousands of small fish an inch or less long and countless numbers of very small frogs. The most peculiar thing about this was that the fish were unknown here and the frogs, all alive, were coal black and were also unknown.
Flash frog warning.
Flash frogs. Ardafil, Scotland, August 10th, 1856. The post runner between Redcastle and Keswick was suddenly enveloped in what appeared to be a shower of frogs. They fell fast upon his hat and shoulders, and dozens of them found an easy resting place in his coat pockets. The air was quite darkened with him for about 30 yards by 14 or 15 yards, and the road was so densely covered with the dingy little creatures that it was impossible to walk without treading on them. They were about the size of a bee and were quite lively when they found themselves on the road. You know what this reminded me of, that story Soraya told? Like, clearly it rained bunnies.
Yeah.
That's why there are so many of them. It just rained rabbits on the other side of that hill.
Yes, that's what happened. Or it was a poltergeist that threw the rabbits there.
Yes. Freaking bunny throwing poltergeists.
Yeah.
Early in the morning, the decks of the steamers Success and Elliott, moored at the Mississippi levee, were observed to be literally covered with small green frogs about an inch in length, which came down with a drenching rain which prevailed during the night. Spars, lines, trees, and fences were literally alive with the slimy things, while the lights from the watchmen's lanterns were obscured by the singular visitation. A curious phenomenon occurred at Big Flat in Cecilville, California, July 16th, 1886. During a heavy shower of rain, the ground became literally covered with frogs for many hundreds of acres, extending fully 3 miles in one direction. On the same day, a similar shower fell, though on a smaller scale. In both cases, the frogs were small, being about the size of crickets and very lively. So they come down out of the sky alive, and they land and they're all ribbit. You know, it's
Must have been a riveting experience. Yeah, it's terrible. That was really bad.
Mexico, Missouri, May 19th, 1892. A heavy rainfall of frogs took place 5 miles, just like so matter of fact. A heavy rainfall of frogs took place 5 miles from Mexico last night. The largest fall was on the farm of Philip Shearer, who estimated the number at 800 or 1,000. The frogs were of all sizes and all alive. Galveston Daily News, Texas. Moseley, England, June 30th, 1892. During the storm that raged with considerable fury on Wednesday morning, a shower of frogs fell in the Birmingham suburb. They were found scattered about several gardens. They were almost white in color. So there's a whole bunch of these just real short newspaper accounts. Greencastle, Indiana, Red Hills, Maryland, Bath, New York. Morris Street was almost covered with frogs immediately after a heavy shower, some of them scarcely half an inch long, but all were lively. So many frogs in the road that bicyclists found riding difficult. Lockport, New York.
Hammerheads.
Yeah.
Hammerheads found riding difficult in a road of frogs.
That's right. Wherever they came from, the sidewalks and streets abounded in frogs. There were clouds and showers this morning, and after them a deluge of frogs. They were not the bullfrog, but the marsh frog. This variety clings especially close to vegetation, but hundreds of specimens were found on the hard pavement this morning. Let's see.
So, I mean, some of these could be, situations.
Natural
where
migrations or something.
Well, where the rain falls, because he was talking about the difference in some people witnessing the actual falling of the frogs or coming out after a torrential downpour and there being
frogs everywhere.
Frogs all over the place.
Yeah.
Because
right.
they do come out.
Yeah, they do.
Toads, frogs, all come out onto the road during serious torrential downpours. At least around here they do.
Yeah. Speaking of toads, Haverstraw, New York, July 3rd, 1877. On Tuesday night, there was a shower of toads. The shower was very heavy and accompanied by a high wind. The toads, of which there were millions, were of a dark color and all uniformly small size. Before the shower, not one was to be seen. Some still may be seen. If anyone doubts the fact, Port Jervis Evening Gazette. So, like, these don't specifically say that people were witnessing it.
Yeah.
But he says that, or the author says that he only chose one where the falls were witnessed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. During a recent rainstorm, a number of live toads fell in places they were so numerous that they might have been scraped up by the peck. I guess a whole bunch of toads is called a peck of toads. They were lively and showed no bad effects from the fall. Millbrook, Ontario, late September. During a heavy shower, countless myriads of black small toads fell with the rain. Shortly after the rain and the next day, in some places it was almost impossible to step on the sidewalk without crushing some of these little hoppers. Spring Grove, Pennsylvania. Shower of toads fell. Parts of the farms of Peter H. Solder and Christian Weaver were covered with millions of little toads as big as a man's thumbnail. Central Maine, July 1893. A remarkable shower of live toads fell between Olamon, this county, and Grand Falls. Millions of them, half an inch long, were seen hopping in all directions. That's crazy. Dunkel, New York, June 7th. During a heavy shower, thousands of little toads seemed to fall from the clouds until they nearly covered the ground. They were very frisky and remained hopping about for some time after the shower was over, when they disappeared about as mysteriously as they came. Is there the watcher is asking if there's an unremarkable shower of toads. I guess if no one remarks on it, it's unremarkable. Let's see. I also, these ones where it's a limited area. See, like that's, I think this is harder to explain of them all coming out, right? You get a big rainstorm and then the frogs or the worms all come out. But when you have this like little strip of land and that's where they all are, that's weird.
Yeah.
During a heavy rainfall, there was a shower of toads. The toads fell in a limited area, perhaps 100 square feet. Within that space, the earth was literally covered with perfectly formed but diminutive toads. The creatures were uniformly the size of common white beans of a translucent white color.
Huh.
So that's harder to explain as toads coming out in a rainstorm, right? They're just everywhere's wet, and then you have this like square area. There's just you can't even see the ground.
Yeah. I mean, you would expect, like, if they, I don't know, I guess toads, I don't know, but frogs typically, they have the tadpoles or whatever. So they live in, like, the tadpoles are in water. Yeah. And they become frogs and they come out.
Yeah.
I don't know what toads do. I don't know if they start in water or not.
Yeah.
But I was thinking if they, because toads typically like live in damp holes in the ground.
Yeah.
And they come out when it rains because the holes fill up. So if you have an area that is really conducive or the perfect environment for all these toads to reproduce, and you've just got thousands of them underground in this area, then it rains and they all come out.
Yeah. So
they will be in like a patch of land.
Yeah.
Right? They wouldn't be evenly distributed across the land. I've never seen that happen.
They mysteriously disappear back into their holes once the water level goes down. Right? That's what they say. They just vanish.
Yeah. They go back down in the holes when the water level's down, yeah.
All right, we'll explain this one. Crabs. San Francisco, California, December 18, 1889. A peculiar phenomenon was witnessed just off of Kearney early this morning, it being nothing more nor less than a shower of small crabs. A light shower was falling, and accompanying it were crabs by hundreds, ranging in size from that of a dime up to that of a good-sized oyster. A similar visitation occurred about the same hour on California Street between Sansom and Battery, but the crabs which fell there were fewer in number, while here they covered the sidewalk and gutter for a space at least 20 feet in length.
They covered the sidewalk?
Oh, man.
Sorry.
All right, we're going to take a break. Can't take these bad puns anymore.
We're going to be in a pinch for this last segment. We're already at 2.
I think this show is hopping along.
Yeah. All right.
I will try to claw my way out of here.
Welcome back to Snake Bros Podcast, your one-stop shop for bad puns and interesting anomalous stories. So we gotta hurry up here. We're on a time crunch.
Yeah, we are in a time crunch.
So
That's all right. We got 10 minutes of podcasting left, right?
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a short segment.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. We went over on the other ones, but yeah. Okay, snails. Let's start with snails here. There was only one story of falling crabs.
That's gonna take forever. Let's do something. We only got 10 minutes.
Tiffin, Ohio, April 21st, 1889. A strange phenomenon took place there last night. It was no more nor less than a heavy shower of snails, from a pinhead in size to some as large as a $50. The ground on Highland, a suburb of the town, was covered with them, and the noise made in their descent was like the falling of hail. In the eastern part of the city, snails literally covered the sidewalks, although it only sprinkled slightly in rain. God.
I'm sorry.
There's freaking puns like all over the place now. Just watch her. Don't make me slug you. No.
Just we're not making fun of this topic. It's just
No,
stupid.
it's hilarious. Yeah.
The topic is this is crazy stuff.
Yeah. Crawford County, Ohio, September 21st, 1903. During the night, millions of diminutive snails fell, and in the morning, the earth was slimy with the little specimens of the gastropod. Handfuls of the snails were gathered up and examined under the microscopes and proved to be perfect specimens. The reign of snails does not seem to have been general, but it was noticed by several sections south and west of Bucyrus. That was in Indiana. Then Mercedes, Texas, October 2nd, 1931. During a light shower in the evening, Mrs. Marjorie and Betty Welch were riding along this highway, and when they came to a spot on the road where hail appeared to be falling, the highway was literally covered with an inch or so of white objects appearing to be hail. The girls got out with their escorts and examined the highway and found it covered with thousands and thousands of tiny snails. The pavement could not be seen through the snails, they said. Other residents on the Progresso Highway today reported they had also seen the snails in large numbers.
Yeah, that's
Worms.
that would be terrible to have to drive through that.
Worms, caterpillars, and creepy crawlies. Danville, Pennsylvania, February 2nd, 1849. A young gentleman showed us some small black-looking caterpillars about half inch in length, which he had picked up on top of the snow near the woolen factory a short distance above town. It was snowing at the time he found them, and there were large quantities of the same sorts promiscuously scattered over a large space, all alive. And that's like wrong time for caterpillars. Because they have a very specific like breeding and stuff. So like you don't see caterpillars in the snow, as far as I know. So that one's interesting. Linden, New York, mid-January 1891. A curious sight that may be worthy of mention was seen by several persons one morning last week. A large number of worms, yellow in color, flat in shape, from a third of an inch to an inch in length and forked at one extremity, were seen mingled with and crawling over the freshly fallen snow.
Forked worms. Are they sure they weren't snake tongues?
God.
I was going to ask if maybe in the previous one, maybe the anomaly was the snow, not the caterpillars. It didn't really say. Well, maybe it did say what time of year it was. But.
February 2nd.
Oh.
And the other one was mid-January.
Yeah. Okay.
Not right
Just
time
checking.
for caterpillars, but yeah, that's good. Yeah. Good point. Near Clifton, Indiana, January 27th. Very strange occurrence was reported by Ben Snyder, correspondent for the Statistics Bureau in Washington. Upon investigation, it was proven by other reliable men from the same place near Clifton in this county. Wednesday, there came a cold, sleeting rain, and with it came a shower of worms, which were curiosities, for nothing like them has ever been seen in this part of the country. They were about an inch in length, of a dark brown color. They had 6 legs, which were well to the front of the body being as large around as a 10-penny wire nail. Under the microscope, it was found that the body of the worm was covered with very fine hair, had eyes similar to a fly, so numerous that it was impossible to count them. That doesn't even sound like a worm. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it
got a
sounds
bunch
like
of legs at the front and sounds like something else.
Some kind of larvae.
Yeah. Let's see. Winsted, Connecticut, early March 1911. Abram C. Shelley, while walking along Torrington Street the other morning during a snowstorm, perceived hundreds of live grub worms on the top of the snow. He gathered a handful of them and brought them to Winsted to corroborate his statement. In a warm room, the worms appeared as lively as in the summer. Shelley is certain the worms did not crawl up through 5 inches of snow, and the only way he can account for their presence on the snow is that the winds picked them up in the south, and they came down in Winsted with the snowstorm. So that one wasn't a witnessed fall, but he just found a whole bunch of... Yeah. Flesh and blood. This gets weird right here. Wilson County, Tennessee, August 6, 1841. A shower, apparently of flesh and blood, has fallen near Lebanon. In Tennessee, the fields were covered to a considerable extent. The account staggered our belief, but strange as it may appear, it has been confirmed by the statement of several gentlemen of high character who have personally examined the scene of this phenomenon. They state that the space covered by this extraordinary shower is half a mile in length and about 75 yards in width. In addition to the information just received, we have been favored by Dr. Troost, professor of chemistry at the University of Nashville, with the following letter from a highly respectable physician in Lebanon. We have also seen the specimens sent to him for examination. To us, they appear to be animal matter, and the odor is that of putrid flesh. There can be no doubt of its being animal matter, blood, muscular fiber. The particles I sent you I gathered with my own hands, says Dr. Troost. From the extent of the surface over which it has spread and the regular manner on some green tobacco leaves, it leaves very little doubt of its having fallen like a shower of rain, and it is stated to have fallen from a small red cloud, no other clouds visible in the heavens at the time. It took place on Friday last between 11 and 12 o'clock, about 5 miles northeast of Lebanon.
What? That's Lebanon in
Tennessee.
Tennessee. It was confusing me.
Right, yeah.
That's
strange, right?
bizarre.
Sampson County, North Carolina, February 15th, 1850. We received the following communication from Mr. Clarkson, writing in the third person, through Mr. Holland of Clinton. Quote, there fell within 100 yards of the residence of Thomas M. Clarkson a shower of flesh and blood about 30 feet wide, and as far as it was traced, about 250 or 300 yards in length. The pieces appeared to be flesh, liver, brains, and blood. Some of the blood ran on the leaves, apparently very fresh. 3 of his children were in it and ran to their mother, exclaiming, Mother, there is meat falling. Their mother went immediately to see, but the shower was over, but there lay the flesh, etc. Neil Campbell, Esquire, living close by, was on the spot shortly after it fell and pronounced it as above. One of his children was about 150 yards from the shower and came running to the rest, saying he smelt something like blood. During the time it was falling, there was a cloud overhead, having a red appearance like a wind cloud, like a dust cloud. There was no rain. The piece which was left with us has been examined with 2 of the best microscopes in our place, and the existence of blood is well established, but nothing was shown giving any indication of the character of the matter. It has the smell, both in its dry state and when macerated in water, of putrid flesh, and there can be scarcely a doubt that it is such. So now we know where all the stuff from the fish bones went.
Yeah, there you go.
Near Los Angeles, California, July 1869, this must be terrible, during a funeral. As mourners gathered for a funeral at a farm, blood and meat rained out of a clear sky for 3 minutes. God, can you imagine that? The substances blanketed 2 acres of a cornfield. On examination, the blood was found to be mixed with what looked like hairs from animal fur. The flesh ranged in size from small particles to 6 to 8 inch strips and included what witnesses took to be pieces of kidney, liver, and heart. One witness brought samples to a local newspaper whose editor subsequently declared that the meat fell we cannot doubt. Even the persons in the neighborhood are willing to vouch for that. Where it came from, we cannot even conjecture. Los Angeles News.
Sounds like you compare that to, the cattle mutilations and stuff like, where did all the blood go? Where, and they take certain body parts.
Right. Eyeballs and tongues and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also is like, I don't know. We'll have to talk about the implications later. Gastonia County, North Carolina. A gentleman writing from Gastonia gives an account of a truly wonderful occurrence. He states that the shower of flesh, genuine, unmistakable flesh, fell on the farm of James M. Hanna. The circumstances, so far as they can be gathered from the letter alluded to and from the statement of Mr. G.W. Chalk from the city of Charlotte, who visited the spot and heard the statements of those who witnessed the phenomenon, are as follows. Saturday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, while Mr. James M. Hanna and some of his little grandchildren were picking cotton in a field near the house, they were astonished at the sight of small pieces of flesh falling all around them. The shower continued for some time, and when it ceased, it was discovered that the flesh was scattered over an area of about half an acre of ground. The pieces varied from a ½ ounce to an ounce in weight. In the words of our correspondent, the ground was not covered, but the flesh fell like light hail. In appearance, it is described as resembling beef, part of it being filled with small sinew, but in no piece were bones or fatty matter found. When it fell, it had the appearance and odor of fresh meat, but the pieces sent to us for inspection are almost entirely odorless and resemble dried beef. It may be added that the weather was perfectly calm at the time of this shower, and that there had been no storm and no heavy wind in that section in several weeks. So, fresh flesh and rotting flesh. Bones, and it's weird.
Yeah.
Reptiles. This is the best part. Near Taylorville in Illinois, August 20th, 1869, the great storm of last Friday night burst in its full fury about dark, and the rain fell in torrents. The electrical storm presented the same features as here, but the most singular phenomenon was a shower of snakes. On Saturday and Sunday last August, every ditch, brook, and pool on the prairie north of Taylorville was alive with nondescript creatures, which have been described to us as being from 1½ to 2 feet long and 3/4 of an inch to an inch in diameter. This diameter is very slightly lessened at the head and tail. The tail is flat, like that of an eel, but has no caudal fin. Indeed, there is no fin at all. The head is in the shape of an eel, but the mouth is that of a sucker. The eyes are small, and the ears are simply orifices. Immediately behind the head on each side is a flipper, like that of a turtle, say 3/4 of an inch to an inch in length, including the limb, which has a perfectly developed joint. In color, these snakes, or whatever they are of a dark hue. The number of these creatures is beyond all estimate. They swim in every branch and puddle of water.
Sounds like a newt?
Yeah.
Or some kind of, what are they called?
Like salamander?
Salamander.
Before
yeah.
it gets its legs and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Pretty long for a salamander, though.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same.
Yeah.
Before they
1.5 to 2 feet long. That's pretty freaking long. Yeah. A shower of reptiles fell upon a meadow on the farm of Edward Upham in the morning near Elk River, Minnesota, July 3rd, 1873. During a heavy rain and windstorm, the meadow, he says, was thickly strewn with the bodies of the strange creatures, none of which were discovered alive. They are described as about 6 inches long, having gills and fins like fish, but also having 4 legs about 2 inches long and terminating in claws. So, yeah, some of the times the stuff that falls out of the sky is just no recognizable species whatsoever.
What is happening? Is it really these electrical storms are just creating entire...
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, what is the deal?
But this is how I think of, like, like we've talked about before, the freshwater lakes up in Canada that used to be under the ice. This is how they have fish in them and all that shit, because just rains go over, and every once in a while fish and other things fall out of the sky.
Yeah, I think about what is it, the Cambrian explosion or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some kind of continuous, like, generation of life all over the planet all the time. We just don't notice it most of the time. Like, how often does this happen over the ocean and no one knows?
Yeah. Better make your snakes have some gills just in case they land in water.
Alligators. Silverton Township, South Carolina, December 1877. Dr. J.L. Smith, while opening up a new turpentine farm, noticed something fall to the ground and commenced to crawl towards the tent where he was sitting. On examining the object, he found it to be an alligator. In the course of a few moments, a second one made its appearance. This so excited the curiosity of the doctor that he looked around to see if he'd discover any more and found 6 others within a space of 200 yards. The animals were all quite lively and about 12 inches in length. Let's see. So he's got other ones, seeds, leaves, and flakes, but I think we're coming up on time here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, what time are we have on the podcast? How long have we been recording here? Yeah, okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
So there'll be more of this probably next week. I don't think we have a guest scheduled for next week, so I have a ton more of this stuff, and we move on from strange rains to other anomalies that I've marked in this book.
And a shower of puns.
Yeah. Texas 2019, a shower of puns was noticed in the Tangent Cube on top of the Edwards Plateau. Unexplained shower of puns.
That's right. And all my skirp derping fell flat.
But at least
Cannot explain.
At least it had forked tongues. All right, you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Comment there. Check out the encyclopedia, the glossary. Follow us on Twitter @SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS. Share the shows. Donate. Thanks so much to all of you who donated.
Yes.
We had some donate to comments we forgot to read. Maybe we'll get to that next show. Lots of you on the Patreon. Thank you so much for that, and also in the PayPal. So you guys can find the donate stuff on the website on the upper right under the Snake Bros Pyramid Scheme section.
Yep. And get your snake skins.
That's right.
Don't forget that.
Yeah, get the snake skins. Give us reviews on Apple. If you give us reviews on iTunes, we'll read them on the show. So far, there has not been one that I didn't read. I'm sure there will be eventually, but so far there hasn't been. And History Shift, @HistoryShift on Twitter. He makes all of our YouTube videos, so check us out on YouTube. Just look up Brothers of the Serpent on YouTube. You can find our channel there. He has taken all of our podcasts and turned them into videos. Thanks so much to him. So you can follow him @HistoryShift on Twitter, like I said. Also HistoryShift.com for his saga of exploring Montana, looking for glacial erratics and dolmens in the woods. And getting chased by Sam Squanch sometimes. Also, we have a Facebook group. Pretty sure you can just look it up on Facebook, Brothers of the Serpent. And it's a group there, watchers involved. George Howard's in there. Also, CAC 2020, Contact at the Cabin. If you guys want to go to contactatthecabin.com. There are not very many spots left, so sign up quick if you want to go. No, I think that's it. I did it fast, so you guys can listen to Shang thing.
Shang Yang.
Serpent. That's right. Thanks everybody so much. We love you guys very much. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.